All right. All right. This is Dave Gagnon. It is August 1st, and this is the Gagnon Group um, growth training. And the goal today is to answer the questions you guys have for helping to grow your group, your company within the company. And so I can answer any processes, scripting, dialogue, objection handling, anything like that. And I'm going to let you guys drive the session today. And so let me just open it up. And if you wouldn't mind, just toss out the stuff you'd like to cover today, and I'll just prioritize it and get to as much of it as I can.
I have a quick question.
Sure. Who's that? Jonathan.
Yeah, how's it going, Dave?
Good.
Good. My question is pertaining to like bringing on a team and potentially a brokerage. Does EXP allow us to financially help facilitate that in the way of rebranding signs and things like that?
Um, so this is my interpretation of the attraction pledge, right? So um, there's one of the items in there where we cannot be incentivizing people to.
You have an alert. Sorry about that.
No worries. So you can't incentivize someone to pick you, right? And so, so my interpretation of that is, if you were talking to Fred and I was talking to Fred, and he was going to join EXP, and he was, going, well, I know you, and I've been talking to you, I've been talking to Dave, and I don't know who to name, and we both say, the same thing. Look, it's not the first person you talk to. It's not the last person you spoke to. It's not the person you spent the most amount of time with. It's really the person that you felt was most influential in making the decision to come to EXP. And he's like, well, yeah, but I like you both. And if one of us said, oh, I'll pay for your signs, that would be a violation of the attraction pledge, right? So it's supposed to be an even playing field all the way around. But let's say we were talking to someone and they said, yep, I'm ready to make the move over, um, but I can't because I need my own signs and I don't have, a couple $100 to make that happen. I have a closing coming up, right, in a month, and so I'll join in a month. If one of us were to say, you know what, I can loan you, 5 signs to take care of your listings, that's fine. That's helping someone make the transition. If you said, you know what, I'll pick up your first, order of 5 signs, I think that's okay too, right? If you're helping someone. But not if it's to get someone to name you in a competitive situation. So, if there were that situation, let's again say Fred was in that position. He said, boy, I really want to, come, but I can't. And, we both knew that he was, coming to join and waffling between the two of us. I mean, we should both know that, right? He should be very forthcoming. And if we both said, yep, no matter who he names, either one of us would give him the 5 signs, then it's not a competitive situation. We're not trying to, manipulate a situation. I think all of that is fine. Let me tell you, I have done something like that extremely rarely. Um, um, but if it were the right person and all of that, and they truly did not have the wherewithal to do it at this time, um, I don't personally, I don't see a problem with it. And I'm not speaking on behalf of the company, but I don't see an issue with it. Um, what I've learned over the years, and I've been doing this a long time for multiple brands, is many agents who have been courted by different companies over the years. A common practice is to give them marketing dollars to rebrand them, give them a budget, a chunk of money, whether it's $500 or $1,000 or whatever, for some new signs, for some car magnets and all of that. And so I think for folks who have been courted before, they might have it in their head that I'm going to ask for this. And so if it's just asking for it, I I would say we all have the same ICA here. The company does not, you know, do any of that stuff, and everyone who's come here has come under the same, you know, the same opportunity, and everyone that I've ever spoken to about that have all done the right thing and come over. But if you have someone who's truly in a little bit of a bind and you want to help them, I personally don't see anything wrong with that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this particular agent slash team currently has about 100 active listings, which I know would be a pretty large financial commitment for them to rebrand all their signs.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, right? So if it's 100 active listings, that's 100 signs, you know, $50 a pop, right? That's 5 grand, right? And it depends on how their signs are, right? So let's say like a lot of teams, it's all about the team. It's the team logo, all of that stuff, and then there's a portion of the sign which has the brokerage stuff that's required by state law, and that varies, you know, state by state, right? But let's just take a a typical panel sign, right? So maybe the bottom half of the sign or the bottom quarter of the sign is all about the brokerage, and everything else on the sign, or as much of the sign as possible, is about the team or those kind of things, right? So if if they go to someone like Oakley or Jack Pratt or someone like that, and they're doing decals, right, the sticker, right, an all-weather sticker, they can have the color matched, the font matched, all of those kind of things. And instead of $55, maybe the decal is $5. And you know, you peel it off, you stick it on, and that sign is good until the day it's hit by a snowplow or stolen by a vandal, right? And eventually they all transition out. So I would say if you're going to help, try to help at the level that gets the job done, not at a level that's abusive to you. The other thing that I would layer in there is, you know, whether it's 5 signs or 100 signs, right? So if it's $5,000 to make the change, I'm going to assume someone with 100 listings is probably doing, you know, 200, 300 transactions a year. And you look at what our cap structure is at the company and how it would impact everyone on that team, and they're doing that kind of volume. They're an icon, so they're also getting $16,000 worth of stock plus the other stock incentives and all that kind of stuff. I would look at that owner and say, you know what, it is a $5,000 investment, and that's a drop in the bucket compared to what the value of this is to you. And I would put it on them. It's not a financial duress. It's, you know, they're asking for something special, and what they're getting special is $16,000 worth of stock on the Icon program.
Right, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. And so just so you know, in the old days, right, if someone was getting some kind of bonus, right, from the company to try to help make a transition, there was always, a take back, right? And so, um, um, so and that's only fair, right? So if I'm asking someone who's asking for something, I don't blame them for asking, but I would say my job would be to reinforce what the total value opportunity is, and the fact that they'd be investing $5,000 is a drop in the bucket compared to the value they'd be getting back.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. Great question, though. Thank you so much. I haven't had that one in a long time.
Dave, can I add something on that?
Who is that? Aaron? Hey, Aaron. Yeah.
Yep. Hey, how are you? Yeah, so for us, obviously we didn't move over that many listings, but we moved over a pretty good, decent amount. I'm really cheap, and I like to lead with revenue. So we were branding our team and not our former brokerage. Really small on our signs per state rules. Obviously, it applies to wherever this agent is. We just bought stickers from our marketing person for the time being until we went through the rebranding process. So literally, it cost us like $100 to get all these stickers to put over the former brokerage, and that's how we did ours.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, so some sign manufacturers will call it stickers, some will call them decals, right? But that's That's what it is, right? Some kind of all-weather application with an adhesive on it, and a lot of these sign companies can, match the color really well. It's a sign. People are driving by at 35 miles an hour. It's perfect. Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks, Aaron.
All right. What else do we have? It can be a short session. I'm okay if you guys don't have any questions.
Dave, this is Carl, and I came in late, and it sounds like someone just asked what's a burning question for me, so I don't know if this is being recorded or not. But that's so when they get to the serious point, that's the question. Will you pay for my signs? Got to pay big expense for signs.
Yeah, really good question, and I did cover that, and it is being recorded. So this will be posted up on my channel by the end of the day. So if you wouldn't mind,
awesome.
just listen to the first 15 minutes, and you'll get your answer on that.
Awesome, thank you.
Absolutely.
Hi, Dave. This is Lexi on Jeff's computer. We're both here, but I have a question. Can you talk just a little bit about how we're allowed to use the new materials provided by the company? For instance, are we allowed to make our own videos, kind of EXP explained, that we can send to people, but use the, obviously the company slide deck?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We had a meeting with many of the top attractologists and the company a couple of months ago when they were rolling out the new slide deck. And so the reason why the company is supplying the material is to make sure that everything that we have out there is consistent, right? And if you remember in the old days, you could, watch 4 people's presentation and they would have all personalized slides, and some of the information may not be consistently the same. And then when they spoke about it, they might even use the wrong words, right? So for example, when we talk about stock, we have stock awards, we have the stock purchase program, and we have the icon bonus program. And I've heard people in their presentations call it stock options, and it's not stock options at all. It's an award, right? And so the company wants us to use, the exact slide deck that they give us. Vicky Bartholome has done a recording of the presentation, right, to show what it should sound like. And people should listen to that and take notes off of that, and make sure that if you're recording it in your own voice, that the actual words that you use are consistent, right? So, if I'm doing a presentation and it's like, man, I say stock options, by accident, I should delete that out, record that section, redo the whole thing, whatever it might be. And so what I would recommend for anybody is, if you're going to do your own recording, which I'm in the process of doing because I need to update it. Once it's done, I'm going to post it up on YouTube, and I'm going to send that link into compliance, right? So compliance@exprealty.com, and I'm going to ask them to review it and let me know if it's not in compliance. And if it's not, I'll take it down and I'll redo it. So I think that's the proper process.
Hey Dave, I have a follow-up on that. This is Jeff. Okay, so really quickly, I have my older EXP Explained video that's still, I think, live on YouTube, and it's got a pretty good SEO kind of presence, I guess, at the moment, to the extent where I'm getting cold leads off of it calling me saying, I'm your video, without me having had necessarily a connection with them previously. So it's a little hard psychologically to want to walk away from that. Do you think it's worth it to send that into compliance, try and look for a way to leave that live, or should I just pull it and do a new one?
So I would suggest that if there's verbiage in there that is no longer accurate, right? So let's say you were talking about what the stock bonus was back when we had 1,000 agents, and today with 13,000 agents, it's a different number. Then I would say you have to change it. I don't know if you have the ability to edit within YouTube and keep the same URL. But if you can do that in the video editor within it, you could, pick and choose what slides to update. And if you can keep the same link, then the SEO should remain solid.
Sorry, I couldn't get to the mic button fast enough there. Yeah, sounds good. I do think it's possible. I don't know if I can just replace an existing YouTube video without YouTube kind of noticing, but I'll check into it. That's definitely worth looking at.
Yeah, I know you can edit a video within YouTube as you're loading it up. I don't know if you can edit it once it's fully loaded, but I know you can edit content and stuff in the notes section. But I'm happy to look at it with you, and most certainly if you find the answer to that, let me know, because I hate to lose positioning on my stuff too.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm sure you have some pretty deep roots on some of those videos.
Yeah. So, but the most important thing is that we have the proper terminology and the most up-to-date data on stuff.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, and as of tomorrow, the 2nd of August, all the information has been new and updated for 30 days. So I think that's more than enough time for us all to re-record whatever we need to and get it up or get the old stuff down. So I most certainly need to do that myself. All right, what else do we have for questions? Are you guys comfortable with initial calls? Calling into different types of brand. You've been talking with folks, but you got them to the point where they said everything sounds good, but you're having a hard time getting them over the finish line. Tell me what's going on.
Dave, can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Hey, I'm curious. So we've got some folks on our team that are maybe nervous about talking to people, and I'm certainly available to help them. In that first presentation, to just help them get some folks under them. But I have a hard time of just not being too pushy with them. Just getting them to be open to that, not being nervous about it. Sometimes they feel like they've got to do it themselves, and or they're just nervous. And how do we? I'm like, man, if I can just help them get 1 or 2 people, life is easier.
Yeah, that's a really good question, John. So we're going to attract people with different desires and skill sets. And John, just so you know, your mic is a little bit close. I'm getting a little Darth Vader breathing there. But and so if we're attracting someone who is a tractologist, right? And they want to learn all the skill set. They want to take the lead and all that kind of stuff. What I do with those folks is different than how I would work with someone who really is not an attractologist, but they are an agent who people know, like, and trust, right? And so I think that there is incredible value for every agent who goes to eXp Realty based on the 4 pillars, and agent attraction is one of them. And so if I'm bringing someone on board and they have the wherefore and the desire to grow, then I'm going to teach them my process, right? And so you all have your own process, and it works for you. But my process is my process, and that's what I teach. And so, for me, I'm going to teach someone how to do the 4 pillars conversation to briefly cover the 4 major reasons. I'm going to have them share the video that I've recorded, and that way there I know that all the things that need to be said have been said, and then they're going to book an hour with their candidate and me for a 3-way call, and I'm going to have them on that call, and that way there I'm doing all the attraction work, and the person joins, and that person goes under my front line, right? So I'm creating a second line, and I'm building underneath my person, and I know that if they have the wherefore and the desire, if I do that with them 3, 5, 10 times, they're good. However, if I'm bringing someone on board and they're like, no, Dave, I don't like that part of it. I like everything else about the company. Then I would say, well, if I help you get a few people, do you want them, or do you want to just give them to me? Because eventually I'm going to talk to everybody anyway, and they're going to notice that you're here anyway, and they're going to join anyway. And so I'm okay if they come in direct under me, but if you want me to put them under you, I need you to participate a little bit, right? And they go, oh, no. If they want to come and name me, I want them to name me. Well, then what I would do with them, John, I would say, okay, look, let's, I want you to do a list. Every co-broke that you've done in the last 5 years, 10 years, however long you've been in real estate, I want you to cross off everyone that you think was a jerk, because quite frankly, this isn't a body shop, and we don't need agents who don't do a good job, right? So take all of them off. Everyone else who's left, what I want you to do is give me their personal cell number and their personal email address if you have it. And I want you to put in the spreadsheet the compliment. Why would you like to be in business with this person? And it might be because they're an awesome person. It might be because they're fun. It might be because they're the smartest techie agent that you know. It might be the toughest negotiator. It might be they're influential. They serve on the board. Whatever it is. And so I got no problem running through a list, whether it's 10 people or 100 people, and saying something like this: hey, Fred, you don't know me, but we have a common friend in John Sellers. And I was talking with John. I don't know if you know or not, but John and I are now in business together. We're partners expanding EXP here in Southern Oregon. And I asked John who are some of the best people that he's done deals with over the years. And he said, you're absolutely one of the best in the area, and that, in fact, you are one of the toughest negotiators that he's ever done a deal with, and that you're very professional. I know you're not interested in making a change in brokerage today, but John just thinks so much of you. He wanted me to tell you a little bit about the company, so if you are ever thinking about making a change, it would be an easy phone call for you to reach out to us. Fair enough? And then Fred, if you have just 5 or 10 minutes right now, I'll give you a quick overview. And if you're interested, we can get together for lunch. Or would you rather set up, 15 minutes later in the week? I got some time on Thursday morning, or is Friday better for you? And that's what I would do. And so if you had 5 people on the list, 50 people on the list, whatever, I love doing that stuff. And if I'm bringing them in under John, right? If I'm bringing in Fred, he's now in my line 2. I'm getting 4% on my line 2. I'm getting paid to build under John, right? So if the only thing that John brings to the table is a list of people that he can give me sincere compliments on, I can run the CATS dialogue and only talk to people that we would want to be in business with. Right? And so if you bring in, 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5 under someone, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden they want to be an attractologist. What it means is they start getting extra money, and they love you for being a great leader and taking care of them. And you love them because they had enough influence to get great people in front of you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's just sometimes getting them to feel comfortable of giving you the names, right? And it's funny how they feel so nervous about it.
Well, And I've done this with people that I think are great attractologists too, right? Maybe they were already in the company for 6 months or a year, and I know that they know a ton more people than what they've called so far, right? And so if I said, "Hey, who's the best leader you know?" They go, "Oh, well, Shelly, blah blah blah." It's like, "Well, great. Let's call Shelly." Well, what are we going to say? All you have to do is tell me why Shelly's so awesome, and we'll call from your phone. You say, "Hello, Shelly," and you say, "I'm here with my partner, Dave. He asked me to make the introduction." I'll take it from there. And so I've done that, with people, and I love doing it live. You just got the mic open, right? So all of that, but you can go through 5, 10, 15 calls like that, and really get someone fired up, because now you talk to 2 or 3 people who are like, "Wow, that's pretty cool."
Thank you.
Yeah. I think if people understand that, once we get going in a marketplace, everyone's going to hear the story, whether it's this week or this year or over the next 2 years, depending on how big the marketplace is. Everyone's going to hear the story. Do you want your name associated with that or not? And if the answer is not, that's okay. You as the leader, John, you're going to contact everyone in the marketplace anyway. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, it makes sense, dude.
So, was that what you were looking for, John?
Yeah, it was.
Okay. Well, great. What else do we have?
Hey, I want to throw something out, if that's all right, just as a thank you. And maybe some of the other leaders in here. Jeff Richmond came out to Southern Oregon last week and met with a bunch of the leaders in our group, did a presentation, and it was really awesome for him to be here. And I think sometimes people that have 75 or 100 people don't think they can make as much of an influence with their group as they really can. And Jeff coming out there really made a difference for us out here, getting my guys fired up. Just doing one-on-ones with my leaders in here, it was a really big deal. I just want to say thanks to Jeff publicly, but also just throw that out to other people out there, because I think some people think they got to be you, Dave, to help everybody else.
Yeah, I love that, right? And so it's funny, right? Because my official title is just Dave, right? And so it's just Dave. But if I'm going to a location, if the local people are saying, "Oh my goodness, Dave's coming to town. This is a big deal," and they make it a big deal, then even though I know it's just Dave and it's just my humble story, and I've got in business with some amazing people, it's a great story, right? And I think there's a ton of value for anybody who has one downline, right? When I went on my first real tour, we had 500 people, right? So it's like, well, 500, that's not very big. Well, to me, it was a pretty big deal, right? But I did the same thing. I've been doing the same thing for 5.5 years, right? If I have someone who, if they were down the road, I would do lunch. And I've been doing a lot more of that. And I got to tell you, if I'm having lunch with someone, chances are we're getting into business together, right? The phone is less personal. The cloud is less personal, right? But if I have someone who is that strong local person, I can support them over distance. And so, my challenge to everyone would be, if you have one person in your business unit, you are that leader, and you helping them, you guiding, you doing the dialogue, you making the calls, that makes all the difference in the world. Most of us have an ego that is fragile enough that we get nervous if we're going to look stupid. And I think most people who don't want to, do anything is because they have a fear of failure, right? Feeling stupid, saying something wrong, not having the answers, right? And you think back when you first got your license and you were going to work with your first buyer, how nervous were you? Well, the reason why you go to work for a broker or you get a mentor is so you have that support. It's like, boy, if I get someone to talk to, I have someone that will be with me every step of the way, or that I can ask all the questions to. But I think most people who get into real estate who fail can't get over the fact that they're afraid of not knowing everything, right? Then you get your first listing presentation. Now I got to do a presentation, a formal presentation to talk about my value proposition and all of that. And I've never done this before. And what if they ask me how many listings I've sold and, blah, blah, blah. And so a lot of people say, well, I don't work with listings. And the reason is because they never did one, right? Until they have a best friend who says, no, 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 I want you to do it. And then all of a sudden it's not a big deal. Well, it's the same thing with, agent attraction. People ask the questions that are most important to them in the decision process, but you can't ask all the questions that other people are going to ask because you didn't know them. And so coming to stuff like this, listening to this when it's recorded has value, but knowing that you're making the calls with them or for them, with them on the call. If you're doing the presentation, if you're handling the objections, if you're showing them how to do a cloud tour and showing them how to make the connection with the SAB so it's a smooth transition and, all of that kind of stuff, if they never do it on their own, you're still making money, right? If they feel more comfortable, they feed you more, they feel more comfortable, they're doing it on their own, then they're feeling comfortable enough, they're running their own business unit. That's how you build a business. So we ended July with 1,299 people. So today we should hit 1,300 people. I added one frontline officially. I got a couple more in the pipe. They'll hit in this month. But I added one. We added, I think, 99 as a group, right? The only way that happens is if we attract people who get comfortable enough that they can do stuff on their own and then get comfortable enough that they can lead others, right? Otherwise, it's just all on you and it's onesie, 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 which is fine, but eventually you need help. And so, doing it for the people who need the help gives you additional credibility with people that you don't know. Teaching them how to do it gives you more leverage, right? Because they can help load up your calendar. And then getting people who can actually do the entire process gives you even more leverage because now you don't have to do it. And then you got those folks like Jeff Richmond training other people in his group to do it on their own. Now you have massive leverage.
Hey, Dave.
Yes.
It's Jeff. Well, first off, hey, John, thanks. I really appreciate it, man. You guys are awesome. But one of the things that was interesting to me is how much I learned by going out and doing this too. So I would just encourage anybody else in the group who's listening to this, whether it's on the recording or whatever, that as Lexi and I are going through our own stuff, we're finding that as we're pouring into other people, it's only building us more. It's kind of like the more you teach, the more you, and so I thought that was really awesome. And to say I've learned a lot over the years from John Sellers is like a dramatic understatement. But going out there really stepped up, and so coming back, I have a renewed sense of energy. One of the other things that occurred to me is, you're kind of going into town, and we all have limiting beliefs. So in my head, I'm like, why the heck would anyone want to listen to me? But John and Jake out there had all done a really good job at like laying some groundwork. And there's this old quote that I always love that says, an expert is anyone who's done anything and is at least 100 miles away from home. And so, in this case, I was that expert, and it was nice. They kind of created this aura of authority around me, which of course does really work to your favor in both directions as you're presenting. So I thought that was really neat. And it reminded me, last thought here is, reminded me of the authority close that you see happen so often for anyone who's been through a timeshare presentation, where they're always kind of passing the buck up the food chain continually to the next authority, right? Like, let me bring the manager over. That they may be a great person to answer that question for you, and then they bring the next sales guy, and everybody's a manager for the day, kind of a thing. And so I see a lot of that happening with people who are successful right now in, call it network marketing, call it what you will, but it's the opportunity, for instance, in my case, to be able to say, well, let me bring my business partner Dave in on that. He's really more the authority on that part of the conversation is really valuable, and I think everybody should continue to leverage themselves for their people and vice versa.
Yeah, that's a really nice share. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, and I think telling stories is very powerful, right? And so when I was on the road, visiting folks, the strongest feedback that I got was in sharing the story. And so the thing that I would always show is that in my first year, I had attracted 3 people, right? 3 frontline, and that was my entire organization at the end of my first full year. And then I always ask folks, based on everything that you've seen with the 4 pillars and everything that's available here, do you think that you could help me attract 3 people under you? And most people, can see that happening. The next year, I only got 1 more, right? So 4 in your first 2 years. And I know people who have gotten 4 in their first 6 months and feel terrible about how slow it's going. All right, so the end of my second year, I had 4 directs, a total of 11. And then April, 4 months later, I had a total of 8. I really started to get, serious, right? So I went from 4 to 8 frontline, and I went from 11 to 25 total. And I got my first really good partner, right? Someone who had a lot of local credibility, someone who got it, someone who's going to make a lot of calls and really help me start growing. And that's when we really started having a lot of fun, right? And so the story I've always told is, let me help you get 10. Keep putting people in front of me until I help you get 10. Because if I help you get 10, then you get it, right? And then if we do the same thing with those folks, right? If I bring someone in, or if they bring someone in who's not interested in growing, I'm gonna, tap them every once in a while, remind them how cool it is. I'd love to help them, and if they're not engaging, that's okay. But if they can help me find 10 under them, if I get 10 who get 10, that's 110 people. And if they're not all cappers, right? They're half cappers, that kind of stuff. That's worth about $100,000 a year. That's a good additional source of income. And so when I tell my story now, right? I got Jeff Richmond, who's one of my frontline, Jeff and Lexi, and they're right around 100. I think just went over 100 recently, right? So so that's a solid business unit. I got Susie, who's now really close to 100 in her first year, and Jeannie's really close to 100. I have Chuck, who's at like 500, and I can go down the line, right? And Chris now is coming up around 70 or 80 or something like that. And so it's easy for me to sit down with someone and say, look, if you do the things that I've done, if you do the things that I've done with other people, this is fair and reasonable. It's not just one person, striking lightning and winning the lottery kind of thing. It's a process. You need to have credibility. You need to have time on task. You need to have good systems for follow up. And those kind of things. And you got to be willing to bring in credibility to help answer their questions. you got to plug into the company stuff, right? If you don't know what's happening with the company, if you don't know how to use KV Core, if you don't know how to use SkySlope, if you don't, come in here and do presentations, then you can't convey all of the cool stuff, right? And so, but the folks who are doing it, it's like success, success, success. And then you start looking under your leaders, right? We got Randy and David in here. They've been around for 2 or 3 months. And I think a month officially. And I think they're already at 17, 18 people in their group. And it's like, that's a solid business unit, right? But I've poured into them, right? You go there and you do the show. If there's 25 people in the room, you do the show. If there's 5 people in the room, you do the show. If there's only one person, you have dinner and you have the conversation. And then they're doing that for their people, right? And so as you help build out an organization, there's more and more leaders. I mean, Aaron was in here earlier. Aaron, is running his own deal. He's got about, I think he's now over 100 people in about a year, and has grown his sales team by 25% in sales volume, and those kind of things. And so you find someone who has credibility, who's willing to share with you the relationships that they have. You pour into them, and they're going to adopt to their level of desire, and you're going to help them to that level. And I think one of the things that is important is you can't make someone want an element, right? You can be demonstrative and you can share stories and you can help them have success. But if they say, nope, that part's not for me, like if someone says, I don't want to work with buyers, no matter how much I tell them how awesome it is, they're not going to work with buyers, right? So if it's helping build the company, if they don't want to do that, that's fine. And so you have to find the people who are looking for that additional way to have additional revenue stream, more financial security in a insecure business, right? It seems every 8 to 12 years there's a market shift. And so having another revenue stream is a way to protect yourself. Having a revenue stream where you can pay off all of your debt before the next shift in the market gives you more flexibility in a shifted market. I mean, there's just so much power in it. But if someone's not looking for that, I can't make them want it. I can't make them give me a list of people we should talk to. I can't make them do any of that stuff. I encourage them to take advantage of everything else, all the other reasons why they're here. And so what I would recommend is, whether you have one person or 100 people in your group, you talk with them, you strategize, you find the people who want to participate and do those things, and the ones who don't want to, that's okay, right? But you can't want it for them more than they want it for them.
Hey, Dave, it's Jeff again. I know I'm talking a lot, but nobody else is. So
Hallelujah.
I'm surprised John Sellers isn't fighting with me. He's usually chatty Cathy. So I always like to use Ali Puentes as an example. She's a great agent up in the Salem area, and Lexi knew Ali, and Lexi actually brought her to the company in our downline. But it was interesting because I remember when we were coming on, Lexi was sharing the revenue share thing, and I'm sitting there and part of the whole deal. And Ali says to us, she goes, I don't really think I'm gonna of that. It's just not really my style. And we were like, yeah, that's fine, awesome. The company's great. It's just an option, right? It exists if you want to use it. No big deal. And here we are, like a year later, and she has 11 people in her first line. And she's not the type of person to go out and just start hammering the phone. She is the type of person that people trust. And she's the type of person that people feel comfortable talking to. And so I like to use her as an example now where it's like, yeah, no, I understand that you don't want to go out and in your mind, whatever your kind of caricature of a recruiter is, you don't want to become that horrible thing. But then there's recruiting and then there's attraction. And it's where we can help them to understand, like, the company is attractive and people will look for the door. And if you're just there, you'll act as that door on occasion.
Yeah, that's a really good insight. Thanks so much for sharing, Jeff. Yeah. Yeah, and there is a difference between being an attractologist and a recruiter, right? So I consider myself to be a recruiter, right? I know the tasks. I know I've done it as a living in multiple industries, and so I know that work ethic. I know that piece of it. And if I have someone who has that as a background, great. If I have someone who can do all of those things and be that leader and learn those skill sets, great. But everyone else just needs to be an attractologist. And an attractologist is one that attracts people to the conversation, right? Get them to the table, get them to watch the video, get them to come to EXPCon, get them to come to shareholders, get them to come to a lunch and learn, right? Just attract them to the event, attract them to the person who's going to do the heavy lifting. And if you want to learn the heavy lifting, wonderful, right? It's just another skill set. It's kind of like if I was a master lead generator for seller leads and I didn't want to do any listings, and I called, any of you and said, hey, I have a, $900,000 seller who is motivated, is looking to put the home on the market at the appropriate price, and do you want the listing? I'd like a 25% referral fee. That's easy all day long, right? And so same thing with agent attraction. If I said, look, I don't want to make that part of my life, I don't want to go through that grind or whatever my perception was. If I said, Jeff, I got someone who is very curious about the opportunity to help build the company, and they seem very motivated, very open. They've watched the video. Would you talk to them? Right? If Jeff was my upline, I would expect he would say yes, because he gets to make more money. He helps, and he's getting a referral. The difference is whether it's at level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We bring in someone, and now I think attracting an agent is the highest paid work that you can do in real estate today, right? And I think people lose sight of that, or they don't understand it fully. This will be the topic that I end on today. And so I'm just going to get on a soapbox a little bit, so forgive me in advance. So in my part of the world here, typical house is, $250 or so. So that's going to generate something like a $5,000 commission, which is fantastic, right? If I'm working with a seller, it's going to take me about 10 or 12 hours of work to get the listing sold and to get it through to closing. If I'm working with a buyer, it's going to take maybe 25 to 40 hours, depending on how motivated they are, how clear and concise we are as to what their needs and wants are, and all of that, right? So typically a seller, I'm making 500 to 600 an hour, working with a buyer about 125 an hour, but with a buyer, they're going to be a seller somewhere down the road, right? And so I want to spend my time in the most profitable areas of the business. Well, when I bring in an agent, right, if they're a $3 million producer in this part of the country, that means they're worth $2,800 a year. But it's year after year after year after year, right? If the average agent is in real estate for, let's say, 10 years, that's a $28,000 commission that I'm going to earn just by helping someone make the transition in, get them plugged into the company, and be there for them. That pays more. Now, if there's someone like Jeff Richmond or John Sellers, and they not only come over and are a capper, but now they have an organization of 100 people after a year, or 50 people after 5 months. That one attraction call, like with Jeff, been working on helping us grow for about a year and about 100 people, right? So I know that's worth about $1,000 a head. That's $100,000 a year for, what was it, 10 hours of conversation and follow-up and all of those kind of things, right? And so what kind of value is that? And it's not like it's $100,000 a year for the next 10 years. They're continuing to grow, right? They're younger than me. They have more energy than me. They have, contacts across the country. I know that organization is going to grow to 1,000 people, right? And so would I rather have talked to Jeff and Lexi or taken a listing? And so it's not, be a recruiter or an attractologist instead of real estate, right? But I want to make sure I'm not missing out on those opportunities. And so, we all have a capacity. And so if your capacity is, 20 hours a week because you got all this other stuff going on in your life, great. But most real estate agents that I know are working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And they don't get a lot of vacations and those kind of things. What I would say is carve out some non-productive time and use that time to help grow, right? So now you're layering in another skill, and every time you bring in someone who's productive, I think that's a huge asset. And if you bring in someone who's productive and then can introduce some great people, there's huge value in that. One of my favorite stories is the first person that I ever brought in was Howard Fritz. And I love Howard. He's a great guy. A year ago, he introduced Mitch to the company, and Mitch came over with 40 people, and a year later has over 300 people, and they're bringing in like 30 people a month right now. And so how awesome is that for Howard? How awesome is that for me and my family, right? And so I just encourage everybody to not miss an opportunity to share. And if someone's looking for an opportunity like this, they're going to want to talk to you or your upline or someone in your upline. Learn more about it, ask the questions that are important to them, and then they're either going to join or they're going to join later, right, if they're interested. And so, I've been doing this long enough that I have people reach out to me and say, hey, can we talk just to catch up? I forgot some stuff, but I think I'm ready. And it's like, ooh, you're doing a great job. It's like, yep, been doing a good job for a long time, and, people will come when they're ready. So it's not like, magic. It's not like I talk anybody into anything. I just have the answers and stay engaged. So I encourage everyone here or watching this video to be engaged on a daily or weekly basis, to give everyone the opportunity, do good with follow-up. And once you have someone in your business unit, you owe it to them to be a leader and to share with them, help them, make the calls with them, get them in front of other people who can make the calls, whatever. If you don't know how to do the presentation, if you're worried about it, I'd get them in. Sam or Brad are in here doing the EXP presentation every week. Just bring someone in, let them do the presentation and the Q&A, and then get them in front of your upline for any final, concerns that they may have. And it's not that hard. It's just time on task. All right. Remember, for the most part, they're not joining you. They're joining a company that has a fantastic track record, that has attracted people as good as them or better, and just is demonstrative of a huge opportunity all the way around. And so we just need to expose them and help guide them through the process. All right, everyone, thank you so much for coming in. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you got value out of this. Let me know what I can do to serve you guys and keep it growing. And have an amazing week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dave.